Welcome to the tutorial on OCC Executive Global Codes. Today we're going to be talking about all the different types of codes that are in this global code type and how they should appear in each schedule, and just a way to double check and make sure that our schedules have these things correctly in them, and standard ways to link these logically in our schedules. Let's go ahead and flip over to P6 to see our project list and go over this. So currently, if we jump over to kind of our active. So this is our database of all the active projects by scheduler, and we're going to jump into a random one. Let's go ahead and jump into Honors Health and SI. This is a project that we're currently going through, and I'm going to go ahead and open up layout so we can see all these global code types. Currently in our database of activity codes for the OCC Executive Summary, we have, let me filter by all just in case I don't have any. OCC Substantial Completion, Phase Pull Planning, Major Intermediate Milestones, Schedule Contingency, Construction, which is made up, that contingency is made up of construction and weather allowance. And then we have Fresh Eyes Meetings, 1/3, 2/3 milestones, construction start, construction level of effort. And then for our high-risk features of work, we have pre-construction meetings and initial inspections. So of those, let's start at the top and work down. So we have our substantial completion. Now, most of us have a good understanding of substantial completion. It's usually around the end of the project, and as you can see here, we have weather allowance and our contingency linked into substantial completion, usually because your contingency activity should be on the critical path holding up one of your major completion milestones. And here we have that contingency at 0 days for construction contingency and weather allowance of 5 days. And these are the actual activities, and the code that is applied to it. If I go to the codes here, you can see that we have the OCC Executive Summary code for contingency, construction contingency, applied to my construction contingency activity. The same thing with substantial completion. If I go to that activity, substantial completion should have the OCC Executive Summary substantial completion code on it. And there's many ways that you can apply this code. You can apply it right here from the Codes tab when you're in the Activities view. If you go to Assign, when you're on the Codes tab, and you hit Assign, it'll pop up the global activity code, the first one right here, Executive Summary, and then you can apply which one that you have highlighted, which in this case is substantial completion, and that's how you would apply it. The next code that we need to talk about is phase pull planning. Now, when we talk about the major phases of a project, like for this project here, we have, structure and exteriors and rough-in and interiors, and these are kind of blended into one. But this would kind of be your structural phase, this would be your rough-in phase, and this would be your finishes phase. Here's your exterior, and here's commissioning. So each one of those major phases of work, in P6, we should add a activity that is linked with a lead or a negative lag. And this is one of the only times that we're okay with negative lag, to show when we should be planning or pull planning that phase of work so many days prior to, a couple months or so before these major phases. Going through and finding the major phases would be kind of project by project, and identifying which ones should be planned out, and then putting that negative lag on there so that you can get out ahead of when that work should start with the first set of activities, and then coding it to this phase pull planning. What that'll do is that'll ping the team to remember to do that pull plan, and then also will identify for field operations what major planning processes should be taking forward as they contact the teams and understand, where the project's at. This is very useful for field operations in where they should be. If there's not any critical work, they can work on working with the teams on going to these pull plannings and making sure they have support from our operations side for these major planning processes to take place. So that's kind of those first two. We talked about contingency, weather, and both construction. Construction and weather allowance have been covered extensively in how we arrive at those in a different video. But when we add these activities and on the critical path, we can add the codes for construction and weather allowances and contingency in our schedule. 1/3 and 2/3 milestones. When you set the actual milestone like this, 1/3, and then you have all your activities, you can either do it this way. The preferred method, which we are changing, is you had actually applied that 2/3 milestone to all these different individual ones. But as we continue on, that'll be a method of discussion that will update these trainings and videos and secret sauce for the scheduling processes and procedures going forward. But as of right now, all your 1/3, 2/3 milestones are coded with this code, and they would show up here for all of those activities. Construction level of effort. When you the start of construction or the mobilization, that first activity of when we start GCs, should link the start of this, really when the team is on board, till the last activity. That kind of should show the overall duration of the project, and this honestly is done wrong. We really should link it to completion of the actual project, which we're not showing, treat first patient or final completion. It would really be finish to finish with final completion right there, which should be the activity that is linked to. It's a level of effort to show the overall duration of the project, and that's a report that we pull for various enterprise-wide reporting, and it should just be the name of the project, and that's about it. Moving on, features of work, high-risk features of work. We have both the pre-install meeting and the initial inspection, and you can see that there's a list here, and it is actually populated and let me toggle to it. If I go back to the EPS and all, if we toggle down to the template portion of the schedule, if you don't have access to this and you'd like access to the pre-con template, it's right here, and we can pass that out as necessary. But in this pre-con template, that is where all of these features of work are, this list right here. And it's already coded, so if you copy those over, those are already be pre-coded, and this will work for your jobs. The pre-installation meeting needs to happen prior to the work, probably about 2 to 6 weeks prior to the work happening, and that would be worked out with the team of when they want to have those pre-construction meetings. As long as we have those coded here, it'll ping the team to make sure they have those pre-installation meetings, and they're calling these trades in to go over the specs and all the things that go over in those meetings. And then once the work commences, we need to have an initial install. When the first scope of work for that is put in place, we should go out with all the specifications that we went over in the pre-con meeting and go over, is it installed per the specifications, quality, all that jazz, and then off we go to the races, and it should be linked that way. Thus, it should link off of the first install activity and then link to any subsequent activities that need to happen. So that should be the tie. So this should be relatively critical if it is on the critical path, or relatively the same amount of float for whatever flow path that's on. So that's kind of those two and how those are linked and how those are used. Lastly, let's go over the rest of the list to make sure any that I don't have in this schedule. Fresh Eyes, if you have a Fresh Eyes meeting, you'd put it in here and link it to whatever makes sense for the actual story of the project. Construction Start, you would just have that construction start milestone and have it add to this code. And that's all of them that we've gone over. So that's everything. So if you have any questions with this code type, or need to understand a little bit better on how these activities should be logically tied, or how to code them, please contact anyone in the scheduling department management team or field operations to get further light and knowledge with these global codes. I hope this has been helpful, and we'll see you on the next one.